can hear me? You're not picking me up here?
Well, I am, but when you tap your mic,
Really?
it's on to me. I speak English.
Okay, let me just test this mic. It's coming through. Can y'all hear me? Fine?
Yes, and with all respect, John, it's usually when you're at a,
Yeah. When I'm thinking and talking. When I'm thinking and talking, that didn't make a lot of sense. Okay, it sounds like the mic is on. Am I coming through the speakers? No. All right.
The judge's lapel mic's not like that.
Yeah, she's hearing it. It's always something, right? So you can hear me tapping? Yeah, come on through. You want to come up? Yes. Okay, he's going to come on up. All right, let me step off a little bit. All right, we're going to be in recess for about 5 minutes.
assured me that the moment she went to the restroom, the moment you went.
I can't speak for co-counsel, but I'm very happy to proceed without Ms. Dunkowski.
All right, well, while we're just waiting to get anything of substance, I will try to speak up a little bit this morning until we run some additional cables through the bench. You've got nothing?
But I can hear you through the other microphones.
How about if I turn the directional mic? Yeah. All right, another good excuse not to have bench conferences. The directional mic is now faced towards me. The court reporter's got me? Yes, sir. Okay, all right. I was just saying, I'm going to speak loudly. If anybody has any issues hearing me, let me know. We're just running some additional audio cables, which hopefully will be done sometime this morning. Anything from the state before we get started?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor.
From Travis McMichael.
No, Your Honor.
From Greg McMichael.
No, Your Honor.
From Mr. Bryan.
No, Your Honor.
All right. Just so there had been some discussion in the last couple of days. I think Mr. Hogue had suggested when the jury comes out to ask them about the court's instructions. Instead of doing it that way, I'm having the Sheriff's Department check with the jury in the morning and make sure that there have not been any issues with the court's instructions. If I do get some response back, I'll let the parties know what those responses are. So I'm just going to bring them back and we'll get started.
Yeah, with all due respect, that makes me a little nervous to have someone from the Sheriff's Department speaking privately to the jury.
It shouldn't, because the bailiff is always with the jury, and she's instructed them on the court's instruction to let her know if there have been any issues with the court's instructions. That's, at least in this court's practice, relatively standard. I'm not going to call them out every day, I've decided, and have them on the record indicate whether there's something there, because there may or may not be, and if any information is provided to the court, then I provide that information to the parties, and I'm happy to do so.
That would be Ms. Patrick, Your Honor.
That would be what?
It's the bailiff. Whoever the bailiff is that day, or whoever the Sheriff's Department is working with the jury plan, there are individuals that are taking care of the jury's security and will be in touch with them, and I've instructed them accordingly.
I trust her, I trust them all, Your Honor. I do not join in that objection, or whatever we characterize it.
Just for the record then, Your Honor, if we could, fashioned it as a motion, and the motion is being denied, correct?
It's fashioned as a motion, yes. I've just explained what the court's process is. I'm not sure that I consider it a formal motion. I'm just informing the parties as to what the court is doing. I guess you raised it as a motion, so technically it is denied?
Okay.
Or the motion is based on the request of the defense. I'm doing what the defense asked, which is making sure that the jury informs the court affirmatively whether there have been any issues with instructions, as opposed to passively just assuming they've heard the instructions. So it's denied in part.
Well, my motion, just for the record, Your Honor, I stand by the ruling, of course. The motion, though, is to have the court do it in open court with the jury seated in the courtroom. And the court's denying that motion. That's what it sounds like, and doing it a different way. I understand the way that you're doing it, and that's the way it is. But I just want the record to be clear. I have moved the court to do it a particular way, and the court's denying that motion.
In part, correct. All right, let's go get the panel then. I just want to make sure, I know that front seat, it's difficult, in the corner here, it's difficult to see the big board. Do you have a full view? Okay, I just want to make sure. All right, I've got all 15 present. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Hopefully everybody had a good evening. We are ready to continue with the presentation of evidence in this case. Is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor, the state's ready. At this time, the state will call Officer Jeffrey Brandenberry.
Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Go ahead, sit down.
All right, Officer Brandenberry. You been sworn in?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Please state your name and spell it for the record, please.
Jeff Brandenberry, JeffBrandenberry.
All right, and how are you currently employed?
I work for Glenn County Police Department.
And how long have you worked for the Glenn County Police Department?
About 4.5 to 5 years.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about your entire career in law enforcement real quick, okay?
ma'am.
When did you start in law enforcement?
I was hired at the end of 2016. I put through the academy, graduated in 2017. Worked for Glenn County for about 2.5 years. Ended up leaving and moving up to North Georgia to be with my wife and family. Stayed up there for about 8 months, and we decided to move back here when I got my job back early 2020.
All right, so early 2020, you were rehired by Glenn County Police Department.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, when you were rehired in early 2020, what were your job duties and responsibilities at that time?
I was a patrol officer at the time. I was assigned an area to patrol. My assignment was to patrol that area and answer calls in that area and back up other officers if they needed.
And is that currently still, or are those currently still your job duties and responsibilities?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you're a patrol officer.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, now, as a patrol officer, you're in a suit today. What do you normally wear as a patrol officer?
I normally wear my department issued uniform along with a duty belt and a body camera.
And when you're a patrol officer, currently and back in early 2020, are you alone in your car or are you with somebody?
No, ma'am. Policy is that when you come back, you have to go back through field training.
All right, so when you came back in early 2020, did you actually go through field training?
Yes, ma'am.
And who is your FTO or field training officer?
Officer Caitlin Roberts.
So once you finish the field training with Glenn County, are you a single person in the car or two people in the car?
One person.
And the car you're in, is that a marked patrol car?
It is.
And are you a post-certified law enforcement officer?
I am.
All right, so you've gone through training down at the Georgia Peace Officer Standards Training Council facility.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so I'm going to direct you specifically to February 23rd, 2020. All right, was this your first day back on the job?
I believe it was my second.
Your second day. All right. Tell the jury what was going on with you that day.
We were backing up other officers on a domestic violence call. I heard a call for shots fired come over the radio in Satilla Shores. So Caitlin and I got in her car and went down to Satilla Shores, responded.
All right, so you were actually out on a different call.
Yes, ma'am.
And it was a domestic violence call?
I believe so, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so when you heard this, you're with your field training officer. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you head to Satilla Shores.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So how were you feeling that day?
Actually, I was sick. I was not feeling well at all.
All right. You had a head cold?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Why couldn't you take the day off?
I hadn't accrued any time off yet.
This was your second day back?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now I'm going to ask you a question. You ever testified at a trial before?
Not with a jury, no, ma'am. Certainly not on TV.
Okay. All right. All right, so we're gonna take it easy here, all right? So, Satilla Shores, what county is that in?
Glenn County.
I'm gonna direct your attention to February of 2020. Prior to that date, did you know the man seated over there, William Roddie Bryan?
No, ma'am.
And prior to February of 2020, did you know Greg McMichael seated here?
No, ma'am.
All right. And prior to February 2020, did you know Travis McMichael?
No, ma'am.
All right, so on this day that you're with your field training officer, what's your shift that day?
I was on day shift, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., I believe.
So day shift is a 12-hour shift.
Yes, ma'am. At the time, I believe it was. It may have been a 10-hour shift. I don't recall.
And you were in your uniform,
Yes, ma'am.
and the car you were in was marked.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, when you and Officer Roberts arrived, who was driving the car?
Officer Roberts.
All right. What were you assigned to go do when you arrived at the corner of Holmes and Satilla?
I was tasked with interviewing Greg McMichael.
All right. And did you, in fact, go up to speak with Greg McMichael?
I did.
And was that captured on your body cam video?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you had the opportunity to review your body cam video, States Exhibit 189?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that body cam video fair and accurate as you recall your interaction on the scene that day?
It was.
And in addition, have you reviewed the transcript associated with States 189, States 189A, the transcript of that interaction?
Yes, ma'am.
And was it fair and accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, the state would tender into evidence States 189 and 189A.
No objection.
No objection.
No objection, subject to certain limitations, Your Honor.
I don't know what the limitations are.
Okay.
Do I need to do this outside the presence of the jury?
Well, we probably could just approach briefly.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask that you go ahead and take a step into the jury room, and we'll bring you back out in just a moment.
So all rise for the jury, please. Please be seated.
There's a statement made by Travis McMichael on the video that we would not intend to play for the jury. And we were talking here just a moment ago. Is it correct that the state is not seeking to have the videos, the body cam videos, go back into the jury room?
Depends on how they were tendered and admitted.
Well, if it's admitted, then it is something the jury could watch again.
Well, it depends on, but let me think about that for a second. So in this particular case, the reason we're not playing the videos is because of the brutal issues associated with them. And so my understanding is that the parties had discussed the brutal issues and agreed that there are parts of those videos that contain brutal problems
Right.
that will not be played to the jury.
Right.
So when you say that they'll have them in the back to play, no. One, because of the brutal issues, but two, because as videos, this court's position is if a video is going to be replayed,
Right.
it would have to be done with all the formalities of trial based upon a request by the panel.
Okay.
So I'm not,
Very good. That's fine. There are portions of the videos, however, that don't impact Bruton. They show what's going on, they show behavior, they show conduct, etc. I just wanted to make it clear, there is a statement by Travis that he makes pretty early on in the video to Officer Bryan Jr. and Officer Roberts that we are not intending to put into evidence. And so to the extent that we've agreed that this video is in evidence, we are not intending to put in a statement that is particular statement that he makes. So,
Well, it's been tendered.
it's been tendered.
I understand that the Bruton issues have been addressed. If there's something separate, some statement that is, you're telling me there's a statement, I don't know what the statement is, and I don't know whether it is one of the Bruton statements or objectionable for some other reason.
Well, we have a discussion with the state about opening the door to other evidence, and we're not sure that this statement would open the door if we sought to admit it. And so we, out of an abundance of caution, we're not seeking to admit a statement that Travis makes early on when he's there with Officer Roberts, because we don't want the state to believe that it's opened the door. They have not come to us and said that this particular statement would open the door, but just out of an abundance of caution, we don't want to admit it.
What statement are we talking
Yeah,
about?
I'm lost.
The statement is, the last thing I ever wanted to do. It's on page 3 of the transcript.
I'm
I'm sorry,
listening.
I'm just like the statement. The last thing I ever wanted to do or ever wanted to happen, sorry? Line 23. And so to the extent that we're not, we just don't want the state to later say that because we didn't state this on the record, that somehow we've now put this statement into evidence, which opens the door to some, other motive evidence or something along those lines.
Oh, I do understand where defense counsel is going at this point in time. I get it. The answer is, at this point in time, the state is not going to put that statement into evidence. If Mr. McMichael were to take the stand and it became an issue, the state may ask him, did you say this? And we would maybe recall Brandon Berry if he denied having said this. And we will go down that road at the time if Mr. McMichael was ever to testify. So at this point in time, the state is not putting that statement in.
Okay.
And I just want to make it very clear that was our concern. That we're not intentionally it's not being argued that we're intentionally opening the door by putting in a statement.
I understand.
Okay, very
All
good.
right. Okay, let's go get the panel.
All rise for the jury. Please be seated.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. I believe we are ready to proceed. The two exhibits, give me the numbers again.
Yes, Your Honor, at this time, the state tenders into evidence State's Exhibit 189, the body cam video, and State's Exhibit 189A, the transcript of the body cam video, neither of which will go back with the jury during their deliberations. It's strictly being tendered for the record, with the understanding about portions may be played if relevant to the case.
Understand based on the record that has been created on the tender that they are admitted, subject to certain limitations already placed on the record. I think I said that correctly.
Yes. All right, so. Officer Brandon Barry. What name did Mr. McMichael give you when you first went up to interview him? And I'll direct you to page 10 of State's Exhibit 189A.
Gregory Johns, Johns McMichael, McMichael.
And where did he tell you he lived?
230 Satilla Shores,
All right. And what was his weight?
230 pounds,
How tall was he?
5'10".
And did he also give you his phone number?
He did 912-217-1726.
All right. And is this standard procedure to go up to somebody and ask them this biographical information?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall exactly what he was wearing when you spoke with him?
Yes, ma'am. He was wearing flip-flops, blue jeans, a gray long-sleeve shirt, and I believe a black hat at one point.
Okay.
I heard that, but there,
Yeah, if you could maybe just try to pull the microphone in front of you. The way the jury stand's working, it's a little awkward, but if you could try to speak into the microphone.
You need me to repeat anything?
No, I heard that.
Okay.
All right. And you've identified Mr. McMichael as the man I talked to, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, Greg McMichael, at that point in time, did you notice anything on his hands?
Yes, he had blood on, I believe it was his left hand.
All right. So directing your attention specifically to page 13, okay? Starting with the line, he had his arm. What did Greg McMichael talk about? What did Greg McMichael tell you about the blood that was on his left hand?
He said he had his arm when he went down, face down, and his arm was stuck that underneath him. And I don't know if he was going for a weapon or what, because at that point he was still breathing. So I pulled his arm out to see if there was a weapon in it.
Okay. So now I'm going to direct you specifically to page 17 of the transcript. All right. Did Greg McMichael tell you what happened? And I'm going to have you do the specific quote of what he said, lines 5 through 9.
Yes, ma'am. He said, okay, I was in my driveway working on I'm reupholstering some boat cushions in the back of my truck. I look up, this guy comes hauling ass down the street. I'm talking about dead run. He's not jogging.
Right. And then going to lines 13 through 15, what did he say?
Right this way. Several nights ago, numerous occasions, the guy has broken in to a house over there. They've got him on video.
All right. And when you asked same house, what did he say?
Same house. Nobody could ever catch him. They've had him on video going into that house numerous times.
Right. And then going to the next page, page 18. Did he get more specific about how many times they've got him on video?
Yes, ma'am.
What did he say on lines 2 to 3?
Anyway, they got him on video going into this house 2 or 3 times.
Now, generally, what did Greg McMichael tell you about his location when the actual shooting and homicide took place?
He said he was in the back of the truck.
Now directing you specifically to page 21. So if we're gonna start off with line 10, so in regard to how Greg McMichael was able to recognize Mr. Arbery, who had been inside that house 2 or 3 times on video, line 10, what did Mr. McMichael say?
I've seen these videos, so I know what the guy looks like. Black male. He wears short pants generally, a white t-shirt. He's got these little short dreads. I don't know what the hell you call them, but anyway. So I'm standing in my front yard just a little while ago. This guy comes hauling ass down the street. Like I said, I mean, like something's after him.
Okay, so as part of this, did he tell you what he did next on line 17?
Yes, ma'am.
So starting with so I,
He said, so I haul ass into my bedroom to get my .357 Magnum.
all right, so hold on, I'm gonna have you back up to line 17.
Okay.
Okay, so what does it say there?
In the meantime, so I haul ass back into the house. I
Okay,
said,
all right. Don't wanna go into that next line, right? Okay, so we're talking about what Greg McMichael did here,
Mhm.
right? Okay, so then what did Greg McMichael say I did on line 19?
so I haul ass into my bedroom and get my .357 Magnum.
Okay, and then going down to line 22, okay, starting with don't know, what does he say the reason is he gets his gun?
Don't know if the guy's armed, because the other night the guy stuck his hands down his pants.
Okay, and what did he say about that at the end of line 24 and 25?
I don't take any chances.
All right, so now going to kind of the next page, while you were talking to him, was his demeanor, what was his demeanor?
He was pretty amped up. He was, he appeared a little upset. He was talking a lot with gestures and using his hands.
Would you describe him as animated?
Yes.
Right. And you said amped up as well.
Mm.
All right, so did he know where he was?
He knew the general area. He did not know what street he was on.
All right, did you have to tell him what street he was on?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And as part of that conversation at the end of page 22, did he indicate where he saw the man running down?
Yes,
Line
ma'am.
21.
He's running down Satilla Drive.
Okay. And then what did Mr. McMichael say he went from Satilla Drive?
Onto Burford.
All right. Now, while you're doing this interview at this part, how often are you interrupted?
Quite regularly.
All right. Like, could you get a continuous narrative from Mr. McMichael while you're standing there?
No, ma'am.
All right. Why not?
Because I was interrupted by other officers and other people on scene.
Okay, when you say other people on scene, what do you mean other people on scene?
General bystanders. People who were curious and watching.
All right. So, did you try and kind of direct him back to keep talking to you at a certain point in time?
Several times.
All right. So, at a certain point where you're trying to get him back, did you try and tell him, you saw the guy in Burford, the guy was cut off, and then the guy turned around and went back? Did you agree with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at that point, you're trying to tell him, okay, so tell me what happened next. What does he say on page 24 that happened next? On line 2 through 4.
He said, I jumped in the back of the truck because I didn't want to sit in that damn kid's seat again. I jumped in the back of the truck.
Okay. So, at this point, while you're standing there, are you near the white pickup truck?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, when he says, I jump in the back of the truck because I don't want to sit in that damn kid seat again, does this truck have like only 2 seats, or are there 4 seats? Is it a 2-door, 4-door?
It was a single cab. It only had the front driver's seat, and then I believe it was a bench seat, and then the passenger seat.
All right. And what was in the passenger seat, if you recall?
There was a child's kid seat.
All right. And is it your understanding that he's talking about on Burford, he jumps out to get in the back of the truck?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, after he goes ahead and jumps in the back of the truck. Line 7, where does the black male go?
He's running down the damn road.
Okay.
Uh,
And what did Greg McMichael indicate that he was saying to the black man who was running down the damn road?
Stop, stop, stop. I want to talk to you.
Okay. And when he got the truck up next to him, what did Greg McMichael say? Greg McMichael said to the black man.
Stop, goddammit.
Was it clear at this point in time exactly where the truck was stopped when he said, "Stop, goddammit"?
No, ma'am, not really.
Did he indicate how many times he had said to Ahmaud Arbery, "Stop, goddammit"?
It sounded to me like he said stop, goddammit, one time.
Now, did you ask Mr. Greg McMichael how many shots there were?
I did.
What did he say?
He said there were 2 shots.
I'm going to direct your attention now to page 25 at the top. And you ask him, so you heard 2 shots.
Mm-hmm.
What does he indicate?
He said he saw him.
Okay. And then lines 6 through 9. What did he say then?
I saw him. Yeah. In fact, if to be perfectly honest with you, if I could have got a shot at the guy, I'd have shot him myself because he was that violently, and then we were interrupted again.
And you were interrupted again.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, the person who interrupted you at this time, was this a law enforcement officer?
I don't believe so, no, ma'am.
Okay, it's just some bystander stranger who walks up.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, Officer Brandon Berry, second day back on the job, right? You have a cold. Did you allow this strange person to come up and start talking to Greg McMichael?
Did.
All right. So at any point in time, was Greg McMichael isolated from speaking with any of the other parties there?
No.
Was he told to sit on the curb and don't move?
No.
Was he put in the back of a patrol car?
No.
And so some strange guy just comes up to him and starts talking to him.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And you didn't stop him or tell him to go away?
I did not.
Okay. All right. And during this point in time when this unknown man comes up, did your sergeant also come up and interrupt?
Yes.
Okay. So you've got your sergeant coming up and interrupting, you've got unknown people coming up and interrupting, and you're trying to get a statement from this person.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, the person who walked up, was this a man or a woman?
It was a male.
White, black, Asian, or Hispanic?
White male.
Did he ever identify himself?
No.
Did he appear to know Greg McMichael?
He appeared to.
Did Greg McMichael appear to know him?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and direct your attention now to page 26. All right. Bottom of page 26. And this, we're going to go through this. All right. So this is this unknown male speaker talking. And where are you when this is happening?
I believe I was taking down driver's license information.
Okay. So they're standing right there.
Yes, ma'am. They were right next to me.
All right. And this is captured on your body cam?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, line 22, when the male speaker comes up to Greg McMichael, what does this man say to Greg McMichael?
He said, I was concerned that it might have been the drunk guy that lives up there on the corner in that house on the right-hand side there.
Okay. And Greg McMichael says, yeah. What does the guy say next on line 1, page 27?
He's always on the road. He's always walking on the road.
And what does Greg McMichael say?
Oh, the one that kind of shuffles?
And the male speaker agreed with him?
Yes.
What did Greg McMichael say next?
Yeah, no, this ain't no shuffler. This guy's an asshole. I mean, he was hooked up when he came around that street.
All right, so hold on. Greg McMichael says, this ain't no shuffler.
Yes, ma'am.
This guy's an asshole.
Yes,
Who's he
ma'am.
talking about?
I'm assuming Ahmaud Arbery.
All right. And he says, I mean, he was hooked up when he came around the street. That's what he's telling this other man.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. How far away were you from the dead body of Ahmaud Arbery when he called him an asshole?
20, 30 feet maybe. maybe a little bit further than that.
And at this point in time, was Ahmaud Arbery surrounded by EMS and other people?
Yes, ma'am.
The male speaker then asks, was he walking? What does Greg McMichael say?
No, running flat out. Running flat out. I don't know where he was coming from down there.
So he's telling this stranger, I don't know where he's coming from.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the male speaker says, you never know what's going on. And then he asks him, are you okay? What does Greg McMichael say?
Thank you thank you so much for that.
What's he talking about?
I'm not sure.
Was he given some water at this point?
He was.
All right. And the male speaker says, can I get some more stuff? What does Greg McMichael say? Line 18.
I'm sorry.
When the male speaker at line 16 says, I can go get some more stuff, what does Greg McMichael respond?
I'm perfectly fine.
And then, does the male speaker inquire about his son? Is
He
your son
does.
okay?
Yes, ma'am.
What's Greg McMichael say?
He's upset as hell.
Does he repeat that?
Yes, ma'am.
And then the male speaker says, I can imagine.
Mm.
The male speaker then asks him a question. What does the male speaker ask him at line 25?
So the guy have a gun.
And what does Greg McMichael say on the top of page 28?
No, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't tell if it's one on him or not, but he attacked my son.
All right. At this point in time, are you interrupted again?
Yes, ma'am.
And who does the interrupting this time?
The coroner.
The coroner shows up.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And the male speaker's then asking him, oh, really?
Yes, ma'am.
Because he just said, he attacked my son. And what does Greg McMichael say?
He came at him.
And then what does Greg McMichael say?
He tried to get the damn shotgun away.
So at this point in time, a total stranger has walked up and he's telling him that this is his narrative. He attacked my son, tried to get the shotgun away.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. At that point, did the male speaker ask him, well, where's your son live?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did Greg McMichael say?
With me.
And then what did Greg McMichael tell him?
Right there. Yeah, you know my son, Travis, the redheaded kid.
Then what does he go on to refresh this man's recollection?
He was looking at your boat, was helping you with your boat.
All right. Now, did Greg McMichael indicate whether he had a cell phone on him or not?
He said he did not.
Do you have any idea how he got a cell phone to start making calls at the scene?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Did you see anybody walk up and give him his cell phone?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Okay. Now, generally, at this point in all of this, the coroner's there, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you kind of pivot away from interviewing Mr. McMichael?
Yes, ma'am.
So I want to ask you a few questions. Did Greg McMichael ever indicate to you at that time that he thought Ahmaud Arbery, the guy, had committed a crime that day?
No, ma'am.
So he didn't say the guy committed the crime of this.
No, ma'am.
And when he said to you that numerous occasions the guy has broken into a house over there, they've got him on video, what house was Greg McMichael talking about?
A house down the road that was under construction.
Okay, so he's not talking about his home at 230 Satilla Drive.
No, ma'am.
All right. While speaking with you, did Greg McMichael ever use the word burglary?
No, ma'am.
Did he ever use the word trespass?
No, ma'am.
Did he ever tell you while you're talking to him that he was attempting to make a citizen's arrest?
No, ma'am.
Did he ever even use the word arrest?
No, ma'am.
Did he ever even use the word detain?
No, ma'am.
All right. Did he ever tell you that, oh, we were going to detain this guy and wait for the police to come and investigate?
No, ma'am.
Did he ever tell you, oh, by the way, I saw Mr. Arbery throwing stuff out of his pockets as he ran?
No, ma'am.
All right, at this point, you've pivoted away. Do you spend some more time at the scene?
A little bit, yes.
All right. And what did you do then for the rest of the day? Did you stay at that scene or did you leave that scene?
No, ma'am. Once our investigative division arrived on scene, the scene was turned over to them. We went back in service on the way to headquarters so that I could start on the report.
All right. So what do you mean by back in service? What does that mean?
We were available for calls.
Right. And did you actually go to any other call after this particular incident?
No, ma'am.
You went back to headquarters?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, where's headquarters?
It is 157 Public Safety, or it was Public Safety Boulevard.
All right. And how long does it take you to get there from Satilla Shores?
15 minutes.
And you went to the station, and did you write a report in conjunction with what you had done that day?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Is it just a synopsis?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And did you upload your body cam video into the system at Glenn County Police Department headquarters?
I did.
Did that conclude your involvement in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Were you still on scene when Sheila Ramos showed up to start taking photos and everything, or had you left by that point in time?
I don't recall. I believe we were still there, but I don't recall 100%.
I may have one more. Did you know the address of the house under construction?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so he just said some house under construction.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And his address was the 230 Satilla Drive?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, did he ever indicate exactly how far he was right then and there from his house?
I believe he did. I believe he pointed at a 2-story house and said he was the one right next to it.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, I will pass the witness. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I forgot. Well, at the scene with Officer Caitlin Roberts, were some photos taken of Travis McMichael right then and there?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you witness Officer Caitlin Roberts taking those photos?
Yes, ma'am.
And prior to coming into court today, have you had the opportunity to review State's Exhibit 267 through 278?
Yes, ma'am.
267 through 278.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and were they fair and accurate pictures as far as what you recall Travis McMichael looking like at the scene at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. At this time, the state would tender into evidence State's Exhibit 267 through 278.
No objection.
No objection.
No objection. They're admitted.
So, first off, I'm going to go ahead and approach my approach, Your Honor. Thank you. Okay. So first off, taking a look at that, is that really pixelated?
It is.
All right. So, and this is just the nature of the photos?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And was Officer Roberts taking this with an actual camera or with something else?
I don't believe she was using a camera.
Okay, so her cell phone?
I think so.
All right. So it states 267. Is that what Travis McMichael looked like?
Yes, ma'am.
268?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Once again, are we looking at the wrist area of Travis McMichael?
Yes, ma'am.
269, wrist area and pants?
Yes, ma'am.
And 270.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we looking at the other arm here? That's 270. 271. So the same picture?
Yes, ma'am.
272. What do we have here?
A good bit of blood.
273. Also?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. We also see his face here, is that right?
Mhm.
274. Is this the back of Travis McMichael?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, who's that there?
That would be me.
275, what do we have here?
The back of his head.
276. Are we looking just sort of at the back of his jeans at this
Yes,
point?
ma'am.
277. Looking at blood on his t-shirt.
Yes, ma'am.
And then 278, what are we looking at there?
His face with some blood spatter on it.
And it's spatter, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. At this time, I will pass the witness. Thank you, Judge.
Mr. Hope.
Good morning, Officer Bryan Jr.
How you doing today, sir? Good morning.
Turn this so all my jurors can see me. That's not all you, okay? All right. Let's get some further context on your testimony, and I want to start with beliefs that Greg McMichael told you he had concerning Mr. Arbery
Okay.
in the neighborhood, okay?
Yes, sir.
So the state read the part, or had you read the part, where they thought he was coming from some house under construction down the street,
Yes, sir.
right? You have your transcript up there of your
I do.
body cam? Let's go to page 6, line 6. And while you're getting there, Mr. McMichael actually went through the story with you 2 or 3 times.
Several times, yes, sir.
Right, and we were looking at one of those times when he went through it just now with the state on direct, right?
Yes, sir.
But he had already told it to you once before, and he even told it to you
He-
another time.
Again, yes, sir. He told me several times.
And in part, that was because of the interruptions that were occurring, and you had to stop and start.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
The other part of that was for clarification purposes.
right, and that's a police technique, have somebody tell the story a couple times, see if it stays the same.
Yes, sir.
His stayed the same.
Objection. That's for the jury to determine. Relevance.
That's sustained. Just go ahead and ask a different question.
I'm sorry, was the objection sustained?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My microphone's not. It was sustained.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're at page 6, line 6. This is the first round through the story, am I right?
Yes, sir.
And you're talking to him, and he's describing to you who this guy is, who he thinks he is. And you with me at line 6, he says, this is Greg McMichael talking to you, right out here, and I imagine on the body cam he's pointing, as he says here, pointing down the street.
Objection, is there a question? Compound question?
That's fine. You're zeroing him on the question. All right, go ahead.
I'm breaking it down. So when he says right out here, without turning on the whole video and all, when a person says right out here, he's pointing at some place.
I'd have to watch the video. I don't recall.
Well, let's go on. He says, this guy, whom we've seen on video numerous times, breaking into these other houses, he comes hauling ass down the street. I mean, he's got it hooked up. That's what he said to you?
Yes, sir. That's accurate.
And again, when he said breaking into these other houses, later on in your synopsis, as it was characterized, your report, you wrote in it that Mr. McMichael reported to you that he believed this guy had been breaking into houses in the neighborhood, right?
Prior, yes.
If you'll go to page 26, line 10. And we're just going to do two more of these that weren't brought out just now. Is this at line 10, Mr. McMichael talking to you, but there's another person that has now come up, another police officer named Sergeant Leska.
Yes, sir.
And you know who Sergeant Leska
Yes, sir.
is, right? And so you're standing there, it's being recorded, but you're involved, I guess, in the conversation, even though he's now talking to Sergeant Leska.
I would have to watch the video, but I believe so.
All right, well, looking at your transcript at line 10, Mr. McMichael says to you and Sergeant Leska, he's the one breaking in all these houses out here. He said that to you too?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Go to page 30, and we'll go to line 18. Now, another person's walked up. This is Christy Rozier, right?
Yes, sir.
And Christy Rozier is the coroner of Glenn County.
One of, yes, sir.
So Christy Rozier is standing there, and you're still involved in the conversation and talking with Christy Rozier and Greg McMichael, and I'm at line 18. Well, let's go to 16. Well, he makes frequent trips to the neighborhood and gets caught on video cameras like every third or fourth night, breaking into places, and nobody's been able to catch him. That's what he said to you?
That's what he injected into our conversation, yes.
With the conversation with you and
Me and Ms.
Christy
Rozier.
Rozier?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so earlier when you read that no one has ever been able to catch him, you understood in the context of the conversation that we're not just talking about police, but also neighbors and Mr. McMichael.
At the time, I was unfamiliar with any kind of crime in Still Shores.
You
That's
didn't
not my.
have any background on any.
No, sir. That's not my typical zone. That's not where I usually patrol. I'm not very familiar with the area.
Okay. All right, let's go back to page 13, line 7. We'll do a different topic now. This is where Mr. McMichael, you saw that he had blood on his hand, right?
Yes, sir.
And you learned that he got that blood on his hand because Mr. Arbery had fallen face down on the street, and he had reached under his torso and pulled his arm out to see if he had a gun in his hand.
He said he grabbed his arm and pulled his arm out. Yes, sir.
For the purpose of
For the
seeing
purpose of checking to see if he had a firearm. Yes, sir.
if he had a
Or a
firearm.
weapon, I believe he said.
A weapon. All right. And he told you he did that because he had believed that this guy may have been armed.
That's what he said. Yes, sir.
And he told you that the reason he ran in his house and got his .357 before he pursued this man is because he doesn't take chances. If he thinks somebody's armed, he's going to be armed.
He said he doesn't take chances.
And you understood in the context of the conversation that he's saying, I'm getting my gun because I'm not going to take a chance that he's armed.
What he understands in the context of the conversation, this is about what Greg McMichael said. It's for the jury to determine.
I'm just establishing the context for the part of what this interview was and how it was meant, what he understood it to mean.
I think you asked in terms of what he understood Greg McMichael to mean. That's sustained then as a speculation on the witness's part.
Well, at any rate, the part you read is, in the context of it, he's telling you why he went in his house and got his gun.
He told me he went into his house to get his gun.
All right. Now, let's go to page 24 of your transcript. And the roads get a little confusing here. Did you know Satilla Shores neighborhood intimately back then? You knew all the streets?
No, sir.
No. So when people are describing the roads and the streets, was it a bit confusing to you at times?
At the beginning it was. I figured out that that the roads make a loop and everything kind of comes back that way.
Yeah. Well, I'll hold up the map for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna get this out for you, trying to communicate.
Well, I'll just hold it for now.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate it. There's a map of the neighborhood. Does that look familiar to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so when you said it makes a loop, you know that up here above this map would be Highway 17, and there's Satilla Drive and Zellwood, the only two roads into the neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
And then the neighborhood just makes a big loop.
Yes, sir.
Right? And the roads at issue in the case that you're talking to Mr. McMichael about are Burford, Satilla Drive, Burford, and then Holmes.
Yes, sir.
Right? And when he was talking, even though he lives here on Satilla Drive, didn't even know the name of Holmes
Yes, sir.
himself, did he?
Correct.
First. And it was Officer Sergeant Roberts who injected Holmes into the...
I believe it was Officer Robertson.
Okay. So,
Could you let the public know?
yes. You got it? Okay, thank you. So we're at page 24 then, and you were asked to read to the jury line 2, starting at line 2. And this is where Mr. McMichael's telling you, are you with me?
Yes,
On the
sir.
transcript? I jump in the back of the truck because I don't want to sit in that damn kid seat again, so I jump in the back of the truck. And even though he didn't say what road that was, you understood and testified a few minutes ago that you understood that to be Burford Road.
I believe he said that. Yes, sir.
Okay. And then going down on that same page, you were asked to read that they were running down the dam road. I'm at line 7.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, I'm hollering, stop, stop, stop. We wanna talk to you. And you understood that this portion is at Holmes Road or Burford Road?
My understanding was that occurred on Burford.
All right. The next paragraph beginning at line 10, and we get up next to him, and I said, stop, goddammit. You see that part?
Yes, sir.
Now, you think that's also on Burford?
That's my understanding of it. Yes, sir. There was never any mention of Zellwood, and earlier on, he told me that he turned around on Burford and stopped and began running back towards Holmes.
Well, here's what I want you to do, Officer Brandenberry. You can't read this part out loud under the rules, but if you would read to yourself the full paragraph that begins at line 10 and ends at line 17. Just take a moment and read that.
Mm-hmm.
You got it?
Yes, sir.
So the line that you were asked to read, and we get up next to him, and I said, stop, goddammit, and then you had to stop there.
Mm-hmm.
When you read that in context, it appears to you, does it not, that he's talking about the final encounter in the final seconds that's on video there at Holmes Road, almost to the intersection of Satilla Drive. Based on what he's describing
Yes,
has
sir.
happened in the rest of that paragraph,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Okay, so the words "stop, goddammit," he says he uttered or spoke to Mr. Arbery while he's in the back of the pickup truck on Holmes Road near Satilla at the end of this encounter, right?
Somewhere on Holmes Road, yes, sir. That's my understanding.
Okay. And when he says that's what he said, have you had a chance to review the case beyond your own body cam and your own transcript, for
No, sir,
example?
that's had nothing to do with me. I haven't had any part of any further investigation. Once I left the scene, I was done with it.
Right, I understand that part. My question though is, in working the case, preparing for trial, coming here today, you have not looked at the video?
No, sir.
What we're all calling the video. You haven't looked at that?
I saw it when it first came out. Other than that, I have not seen it. I can't testify to any of that, so that's got nothing to do with me.
Gotcha. Just trying to get what does have to do with you in its proper context here. So when you watched that video, you saw Mr. McMichael, Greg McMichael, standing in the back of the pickup truck
Yes, sir.
with a phone to his ear.
I don't recall.
You don't recall
No,
that?
sir. I haven't seen that video. It's been, what, 20-something months?
And you didn't listen to the 911 call that he was engaged in at the
No, sir.
time? Last question. You would agree with me that if this quote we're talking about right here that he said to you is what he thinks he said to Ahmaud Arbery in the final seconds of their encounter, and he's saying it while he's on an open 911 call that's recording it, that the best...
Form of question, speculation.
Yeah, but
I'm not asking him to speculate anything.
You're
I haven't
giving
even finished the question.
Well, but sounds like a long hypothetical to a lay witness.
It's not a hypothetical, Your Honor. It's actual fact. I'm asking, if I can finish the question, it would be very clear, and I think he'll be able to answer it.
Let's finish the question, but
Okay.
before you answer, let's go ahead and address what it is.
So Mr. McMichael's on the scene moments after all of this has happened, being recorded on your body cam, telling you what he thinks he said, the actual words he said to Ahmaud Arbery, right?
Yes, sir.
That's what he's doing here.
Yes, sir.
And so my question to you is, a recording of what he actually said would be more reliable than even his own words to you. Wouldn't you agree?
Objection. That's for the province of the jury to determine the reliability of anybody's statement. They're the ones who will judge the credibility.
Yeah, sustained on that.
Okay, well, we'll get to that part then. Thank you, Officer Brandenberry. Oh, just 1 second. That's my co-counsel, Laura Hogue. We represent Greg McMichael. And so my question, now my last question is, if Greg McMichael had said anything to you that day that is in any way materially different from what he told you the first, the second, and the third time you all went through the story, you would have noted that in your report, wouldn't you?
I believe so. Again, that's more for our investigators to look through my body camera and then have further questioning.
But you wrote a report.
Yes, sir, I did.
It's about a page and a little more long.
Yes, sir.
You've seen it.
Yes, sir.
You've reviewed it.
Yes, sir.
And you didn't note in it any place where Greg McMichael's 3 times through the story differed in any way, did you?
I'd have to look at my report.
All right, I'll let you look at it.
I've got a copy.
Oh, you did?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Good deal. Take a look at it. It's about a page long. Read the whole thing if you need to.
To answer your question, no, sir, I did not.
No, sir, you did not
I
what?
did not notate that he had any change in his store.
And if he had, you would have notated that, correct?
I should have, yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Warrant Officer. I'm Jason Sheffield. I represent Travis
Okay.
McMichael. We haven't talked yet, have we?
No, sir.
Okay. There's a part that you were just asked about by Mr. Hogue, previously by the state, about those statements, "Stop, goddammit." And you were just kind of going through that a moment ago.
Right.
One thing that you haven't noted yet and you haven't been asked to help clarify that issue is the following. You understand that at some point, you're here on Burford,
Mm-hmm.
and there's an interaction that takes place here on Burford.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Where Greg says he gets out of the truck, gets down and climbs in the back.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But in your report there, or in the transcript that you've got, Greg actually says to you that they haul ass around. You recall that?
Yes, sir. I believe in context, they said that he turned back towards Holmes and they came around to head him off.
Yeah, so you were told that day that they actually hauled ass around and came out this way.
Yes, sir.
And that kind of clears up the Burford and the Holmes issue. Because Greg was telling you, we hauled ass around and came out this way.
Right, after the interaction on Burford, yes, sir.
Right, and then that helps the jury understand that then that last interaction of yelling, "Stop, goddammit," that happens on Holmes.
That is my understanding.
Okay, very good. Now, you also had a conversation with Officer Minshew that day. Do you recall speaking with him a little bit toward the end of the day?
I don't recall.
You don't recall speaking with him? Okay. You pull your video up here on this yet? Or I can use mine. Yeah, it's 189.
Okay, so
Oh, I see.
C, no, no, go to the folder, CR, see the folder on the flat screen?
Yep.
Yeah, on the folder, there you go.
All right, so do you recognize this as the start of your body cam video?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you're walking up here over into the side grass. Is that Officer Caitlin Roberts walking in front of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you and Officer Roberts have a conversation that because you were back with the department that you were gonna kind of get involved in this case a little bit and work the case a little bit?
Yes, sir. In fact, she told me that it was gonna be my case, the whole initial report and everything. Yes, sir.
The whole thing was gonna be your case?
Yes, sir.
Beyond what you did?
No, sir. Like, I was gonna do the initial report and then the other people who were on scene would do supplementals.
I see. That you were gonna be the lead officer
Yes,
on the
sir.
case? Okay, did that pan out? That you
Yes,
were
sir.
the lead officer on the case?
More or less for the
Okay.
initial, yes, sir.
For the initial report, all right, very good. And your sound's not on yet, correct?
Correct.
Then that officer that you're passing right there, that's Officer Minshew.
On the left, yes, sir.
On the left, and he's finishing up, tying up the crime scene.
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay. Now, at this point, you had already been told that Travis McMichael was over here, or you don't know who this
I
gentleman is
have
at
no
this
idea who
point?
that gentleman is.
Okay, and you're just sort of following Officer Roberts at this point?
Yes, sir. We're both walking onto the scene.
Do you know that she's been told something about this gentleman?
I have no idea.
No idea, okay.
I know. Just breathe, okay?
And she's sort of responding to him saying, "I know, just breathe, kind of just calm down."
Yes, sir.
Correct? Yeah.
All right.
Okay, one moment.
stuff for you to clean up with, all right, sir?
Please.
Okay.
You will
We gotta take some pictures of you first.
do whatever you gotta
Yes,
do.
we gotta take some photos
Yeah.
and then it's up for you to clean up, all right?
All right.
Okay, so at this point, she's telling him, we need to take some pictures of you, we need to kind of process some things, and his response is just do whatever you have to do.
Mhm.
So is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's fair to say he's, from your experience with him, which may be very limited, he's being cooperative.
Yes, I
Right.
mean, yes, sir.
Yeah, he's not trying to leave the scene to your knowledge or to tamper
Not-
with any kind of evidence to your knowledge.
Not in 10 seconds I spent with him
Not
out there, no,
intense,
sir.
and then at that point, you move off and you go do something else.
Correct.
Okay. All right, if you want to look at your transcript on page 39, and maybe even before that on page 38, maybe, does this refresh your memory about having a conversation with Officer Minshew? You can look at the bottom of 38 and kind of go into the top of 39.
Okay.
So the goal of having you read that was just to see if it refreshed your memory that you had a conversation with Officer Minshew.
Roughly, yes, sir.
Okay, so as the officer who's going to come on the scene and write the initial report, you are keen to try to get an understanding of what in the world has happened.
Yes, sir.
Correct? Okay, and that includes, who are these two gentlemen that we're seeing here on the side of the road? Who is the individual lying in the road?
Yes, sir.
Correct? And so you're beginning to start to piece some things together so that as you write your report, you can be as detailed as you can be, correct?
Yes, sir.
And be accurate as you can be.
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay. So one of the things that you were discussing with Officer Minshew was that he was essentially the first officer to arrive on the scene,
Yes, sir.
and how close he was to the scene when the shooting took place.
Yes, sir.
Is that right? And so part of he was explaining to you, you can sort of see it as you're reading it, but he's kind of explaining to you where
I'm
he.
object at this point in time, asked and answered, and Minshew's already been asked about this topic, inappropriate to ask this witness about this topic.
It's not. It's additional evidence that is corroborative of the prior testimony to the state. The state has challenged that testimony. I'm seeking to corroborate it.
It's overruled. Go ahead.
So he was standing there at that time, kind of explaining to you where he was when he heard the shots, right?
Right.
Talking about just being just on the other side of some bushes,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes, sir.
And then, boom, he comes around that bush, and now he sees the whole scene laid out right there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Also speaking with you about the information that he had gathered a little bit about Mr. Arbery and his involvement in the neighborhood,
Okay.
right?
Sure. Yes, sir.
Okay. And how the McMichaels or how these gentlemen were involved with the issue dealing with Mr. Arbery in the neighborhood, being in the neighborhood several times, et cetera.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I was told that by Mr. McMichael as well.
That's right. And this is just all part of your data gathering,
Mhm.
right? Okay, very good. One moment, please. I don't have anything further. Thank you. There may be one more turn.
No questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Can you redirect the state?
Yes, Judge. All right, so first off, let's talk about your report.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so your field training officer on your second day back at work while you have a head cold tells you you're gonna be the lead on this case.
Yes, sir. Or, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and has you write up a report.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Is that it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so how many pages is it?
Page and some change, maybe?
Okay, so this is a homicide case. Got 3 people involved. Got a bunch of officers on the scene, and your report's a page and a little paragraph.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Is this really just a summary, kind of what Greg McMichael told you?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and the transcript that you have right there states Exhibit 189A for 47 pages?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And you weren't the only one with body cam, right?
No, ma'am.
All right, did you review anybody else's body cam?
I don't recall reviewing anybody else's body cam. No, ma'am.
Did you interview the CID detectives?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So this really was just a report kind of about what you did with regard to Greg McMichael.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, when you are interviewing Greg McMichael right here, and you see this, with Travis is right there, at this point in time, did you know that Greg McMichael had already gone up to Travis and told him, you had no choice, you had no choice?
I still, to this day, didn't know that. No, ma'am.
Okay. Do you have any idea how much Greg McMichael told his son at this point in time when you go to talk to him?
No, ma'am.
All right. Do you know who else Greg McMichael has gone up and talked to at the point he's about to be interviewed by you?
No, ma'am.
All right. So at the point he's being interviewed by you, did he mention he'd spoken with Diego Perez already?
No, ma'am.
Did he mention he'd already talked to William Roddie Bryan already?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So he didn't bother to tell you who he had spoken to at the scene about this before you ever interviewed him?
No, ma'am.
And at the point you're interviewing him, his son has shot and killed somebody, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that body's laying 20 to 30 feet away, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And he's animated, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And I think with regard to the Zellwood situation, he said what exactly did he say about how they got over to Holmes?
He said that he saw him running down Satilla Drive and continued straight onto Burford. They followed him onto Burford. He turned around and ran back towards Holmes, and they continued around and met him on Holmes.
Okay. I think you said that their words were, they went to head him off.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. All right, so defense counsel came up and asked you about page 6. Okay, so I'm going to take you back to page 6. Lines 6 through 8. All right, do you remember Mr. Hogue asking you about this? This
Yes, ma'am.
guy who we've seen on video numerous times breaking into these other houses, he comes hauling ass down the street, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so at this time, when he first starts talking to you, this is page 6, he's on video numerous times breaking into these other houses. Did Greg McMichael tell you which houses?
No, ma'am.
Did he tell you which houses to go to?
No, ma'am.
Did he tell you if he had any hard evidence that Mr. Arbery was the one breaking into other houses?
No, ma'am. He said there was a video at one point, but at this point I don't believe.
Exactly. Let's go ahead and move forward to page 17.
Sorry, you said 17?
I did say page 17. So now I'm going to direct your attention specifically to line 14. On numerous occasions, the guy has broken into a house over here, and they've got him on video.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so now we've gone from numerous houses, he's on lots of videos, to numerous occasions, the guy has broken into a house over here. It just says a house, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And that's on 17. And then we go to page 18. And now, they got him on video going into this house 2 or 3 times, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Alright, so we've gone from breaking into all these houses to the one house, and now it's, anyway, they got him on video going into this house 2 or 3 times. So we're down now to 2 or 3 times, is that
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Now, he does go on page 26 to say he's the one breaking into all these houses out here. Is that right? Page 26.
What line?
10 and 11.
Yes, ma'am.
Alright, do he ever tell you which houses?
No, ma'am.
Did he tell you where he got this information from?
No, ma'am.
Did he tell you the victims of any of these break-ins?
One guy was a banker, was as far as we got into it.
Okay. Now, the banker, was this the banker from Alma?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And is he the one with the construction site?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So he says the guy from the construction site is the banker from Alma.
Yes, ma'am.
And now, I want to take you to page 30. I want to get real specific about page 30 for a second. Okay. So, we were talking about our interruptions and everything, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, Christy Rozier, who's she?
She is the county coroner, one of the county coroners.
And she had shown up, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, who's Christy Rozier trying to talk to?
She's trying to talk to me.
She's trying to talk to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Is she trying to talk to other law enforcement officers?
No, ma'am.
Just you.
Not that I recall. Yes, ma'am. Only me.
Okay. And I think you said that Gregory McMichael inserted himself in the conversation.
Yes, ma'am.
Was she trying to talk to Gregory McMichael?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And so he came up and starts trying to tell her what went on.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's when he starts telling her on page 30, well, he makes frequent trips to the neighborhood, gets caught on video camera like every 3rd or 4th night, breaking into places. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, you, as the first responding officer, did you ever find out any of this video footage where he's breaking in every 3rd or 4th night?
Me personally, I have not seen anything. No, ma'am.
All right. I'm going to show you right here. And we're looking at 2158. Is this you trying to take down that information while he's talking to that unknown person who walks up?
It appears so. Yes, ma'am.
Now, who's that?
This is Miss Rozier
All right. And who's she trying to talk to?
talking to me.
All right. And is at this point, who comes up and starts inserting himself into this conversation?
Mr. McMichael. Mr. Greg McMichael.
And these people who are standing around,
Yes, ma'am.
who are they?
Those are Fire and EMS, Glenn County Fire and EMS.
At that point, did anybody tell Mr. McMichael to back off, step away? This is,
Not
The
that
coroners?
I recall. No, ma'am.
okay. So nobody's telling him, this is none of your business, we need to do our business now, you need to go away.
No, I don't. Not that I recall. No, ma'am.
Why not?
I don't have a good answer for you.
All right, and specifically, I'm gonna take you to page 24. We've been talking about this.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So, at this point, Gregory McMichael's telling you, I jump in the back of the truck because I don't want to sit in the damn kid seat again, so I jump in the back of the truck, and he's running down that damn road, and that's Burford.
Yes, ma'am. My understanding.
Okay. And that's when he's hollering, stop, stop, we want to talk to you.
Yes, ma'am.
And then he immediately says, and we get up next to him, and I said, stop, goddammit, you know.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what the defense counsel asked you about.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Between those two sentences, did he ever say, we went up around Zellwood, we came down Holmes Drive, we passed Mr. Arbery, and then we stopped right here?
No, ma'am.
Okay? He actually says that he gets up next to him.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? If you get up next to somebody, does that imply that you're driving your car?
To me, it would.
Okay, so the impression he left you with is, we get up next to him in the car.
That was my understanding. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, it doesn't say Mr. Arbery got up next to our car, does it?
It does not.
Okay, so you have no idea how many times he yelled, stop, goddammit, at Mr. Arbery.
I do not.
And I just want to be really, really clear on page 21 at the bottom. All right. Well, Mr. McMichael says, I haul ass back into the house, I haul ass into my bedroom to get my .357 Magnum, I don't take any chances. It's because he doesn't know if this guy's armed.
That was my understanding.
Okay, so he knowingly went after someone he believed was armed with his own gun.
That was my understanding. Yes, ma'am.
I'll pass the witness back.
Let's do this back in order. Mr. Hogue?
Just a couple of questions. There's two areas, Officer Brandberry, that have just been brought back up on redirect. When the state was just now asking you about all these things, whether Greg McMichael volunteered them to you, like which houses, who lives in them, how did you learn about these break-ins, right? And you said, no, he didn't volunteer those details to you, right?
He did not volunteer who lived in them or how he got the information. No, sir.
And you didn't ask him those questions either, did you?
No, sir. Those kind of follow-up questions are for our investigative division.
All right, that's not your job.
That's not what I said.
That's not what you were there to do.
I was there to get an initial statement and then turn the scene over to our investigative division.
Okay. Who would do the questioning about which houses and who lives in them?
Yes, sir.
How
Their
did
job
you-
is to get more detailed information.
Sure. Okay, then go back to page 24. Thought we had cleared up, but let's go back to it at line 10. First, up above, we agreed that the jumping in the back of the truck because he doesn't want to sit in the car seat happened on Burford, right?
Yes, sir. That was my understanding.
And then the last statement, he said to Mr. Arbery, stop, goddammit, I had you read silently the rest of that paragraph that that's in, right?
Yes, sir.
And we agreed, did we not, that at that point it appears he's describing to you what he said to Mr. Arbery.
He never said where it took place.
Right, but you agreed with me, we're talking about Holmes Road.
It could have been on Holmes. It may not have been. He didn't clarify.
Okay.
At the time, I didn't ask.
So earlier, though, when we agreed that based on the context of this whole statement, that you can't read to the jury, but you read to yourself, you agreed with me he's talking about Holmes Road.
It could have happened on Holmes Road. It may have happened on Burford. He doesn't say. I can't.
Okay.
I can't attest to either one.
All right.
He never clarified.
So when we agreed earlier, you're now backing off that?
That's-
Sustained.
So we don't agree now that this is on Holmes Road. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying it was never clarified as to where it happened. It may have happened on Holmes Road, it could have happened on Burford, I don't know.
You don't know?
No, sir.
All right, thanks. That's all I have.
Nothing further, thank you.
Nothing.
All right, thank you. You may step down.
Thank you.
As with other witness, you're released today, but you remain subject to recall. Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 15-minute recess and then continue with the presentation of evidence in this case. Thank you.
So rise for the jury.
All right, anything from the state before recess? Travis McMichael?
Your Honor, I just want to put on the record, we joined Mr. Hoag's earlier motion about the sheriff talking to the jury. Just for the record, Travis McMichael joins that motion. He said it, we never said anything at the time.
All right, anything from Gregory McMichael? Nothing. From Mr. Bryan?
Nothing, Your Honor.
All right, 15 minutes, 5 past the hour. So you're getting this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Looks like we might need another minute or two.
All right, we're back on. All the defendants present, represented by counsel. I do want to make a clarification because the way, Mr. Rubin, you joined that last motion made me think that maybe I was misunderstood. The sheriff isn't going and talking to the jury. What I've asked the bailiff to ensure is that the jury understands that if there are any issues with the court's instructions, that they send a note so that I can go ahead and see what the issue is and then bring it to counsel's attention. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that, because the way it was couched was as if I was having the sheriff go and affirmatively go and speak with the panel. That's just not what I'm talking about. It's the bailiff ensuring that they understand the court's instructions as we go through the trial, just so that if there is an issue, it's brought to my attention.
I understand, Your Honor. If I misspoke, I apologize.
There's a finer issue there with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your Honor, we're waiting on Ms. Bird. If she's not here in a minute or two, I'll go check on her.
Your Honor, here's the issue, if I can say this. It's based on a case that we had several years ago, Lindsay versus the state, where the court asked the jury bailiff to answer a question that the jury had. So, and I understand that's an extension, and that was a reversed case. So what we wanted to do is to follow the law as we saw as an extension of that, and to make sure that, and while we have no there's not going to be any ill will, I don't want anything attributed to the sheriff's department or the bailiffs, but in our mind there is a difference between the court asking the jurors, has there been any inadvertent or intentional contact, whatever, on your part, or your son just forwarded you a article and you thought, oh my goodness, I thought it was pictures of the grandkids. So that's why we believed it would be sounder for the court to do it. We understand the ruling, but I wanted to make sure you understood why we see the distinction between the two.
No, that's fine. And just to be clear, if anything is brought to the bailiff's attention, it will come to me. Now, whether and I'll be clear about it. The way I've always functioned is anything comes to the bailiff is generally written down, and I know what it is, and we can mark it and discuss it. But that, as far as I'm concerned, anything that comes to the bailiff is brought to the court's attention, and if it's something we need to go ahead and discuss, we'll go ahead and discuss that. I'm just telling you that I want to make sure that the jury knows and understands that anything that needs to be brought to the court's attention with respect to the court's instructions is going to be done so. And we've spent a lot of time talking about it. I just, based on Mr. Rubin joining the motion, was concerned there had been a misunderstanding about what the court was doing. And that's all. And I understand the extension, and that's fine. We're on the record on it.
Would you put on the record for us what the court's instructions to the bailiff to say to the jury is?
I have no idea. Basically, let the jury know that if there are any issues having to do with the court's instructions, to let her know so that I can address them as quickly as I can with counsel. I mean, maybe that last part of it is my reading into it, but that's effectively it.
And the bailiff's instructions from the court is to ask that of the jury each morning?
I haven't done it each morning, no, but to make sure that they were aware of it, particularly this morning, because this morning it was on my mind. But again, the court's given them instructions. They are adults. They understand they're under the umbrella of the court, and they are being instructed at least twice a day that there are specific instructions with contact. I have great faith in the ability of the individuals that are tasked with listening to this case, with their ability to comply with the court's instructions. Most people, once they hear from a Superior Court judge about particular things, are usually going to comply, particularly when you see that judge every day. So if I feel like I need to repeat it, maybe I'll just let you all know that I've repeated it, but those were the instructions. All right, anything from the state before we continue?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor.
Anything from Travis McMichael?
No, Your Honor.
Anything from Greg McMichael?
No, Your Honor.
From Mr. Bryan?
No, Your Honor.
All right, stay ready with this next witness.
Yes, we are, Your Honor.
All right, let's go get the panel.
All right, for the jury, please. Please be seated.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I understand we are ready to proceed with the evidence from the state.
At this time, the state will call Detective Parker Marcy.
Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Go ahead, have a seat.
All right, Detective, please state your, oh, you can take your mask off. All right, please state your name and spell it for the court reporter.
My name is Parker Marcy. M-A-R-C-Y is my last.
All right, and Detective, how are you currently employed?
I'm an investigator at the Glenn County Police Department.
All right, and how long have you been in law enforcement total?
10 years.
So tell us, have you always been with Glenn County?
Yes, ma'am.
So starting back 10 years ago, did you go to the academy, did you go to post, how'd you get trained?
I'm a post-certified officer. I went to Garden City, just north of Savannah, where Gypstick has a regional academy that I attended Band-Aid at.
All right, and that was 10 years ago?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so when you first started, what were your job duties and responsibilities with the Glenn County Police Department?
When I first started, I was a basic patrol officer, responding and answering calls for service and patrolling the zone.
All right, and when did you become a detective?
In 2015.
All right, so now, how does it work at the Glenn County Police Department as far as detectives go? Is there specialties or you do everything? Tell the jury about that.
As far as case assignments, we pretty much work everything. We don't have specific, crimes against persons, crimes against property divisions. We do have some specialties for training that may cost a bit of money to get into versus just being assigned a different case. I do video work as well as cell phone forensics.
Right. So when you say video work, are you kind of like the person who will go to the gas station and pull down the video of the armed robbery kind of thing?
Yes, ma'am, and then we have some software to try and clean up some images as well as we can put video together.
All right. And then when you say you do cell phone stuff,
Yes, ma'am.
tell the jury what you mean by that.
We use primarily Cellbrite. It's a cell phone and overall now digital forensics company, and we can use their software and hardware to extract data from a multitude of devices, most of them being cell phones.
Right. And you've had training in both those things.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So tell the jury what the duties and responsibilities usually of a detective are. What do you generally do? Like, are you in a patrol car? Do you call 911 calls? What happens?
Typically, we work a standard schedule, Monday to Friday, 8 to 4. With the exception of some call days, we come in a little bit later and stay later in case something comes out in the evening. Rotating call days, so if an incident happens during the evening or the weekend that requires an investigator to come out that's not on duty, that on-call investigator will come out. Other than that, we work cases that we either respond to, are called out to, and until their conclusion, or we're assigned cases to work until their conclusion.
All right. So is it more the case that you're assigned a case once a 911 call has come in and a patrol officer has responded?
Typically, yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, you're dressed in a suit today. Is that what you normally wear as a detective with the Glenn County Police Department?
No, ma'am.
What do you usually wear as a detective?
Currently, we have black polo shirts with our badge of office on our left chest and CID on our sleeves with green 511 pants. That's a new uniform. We previously wore with the same patch and emblem, green polo shirt with tan 511 pants.
Based on that uniform, is it easy to identify you as a law enforcement officer?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And do you normally wear a body cam with that uniform?
Yes, ma'am.
So, prior to February 23rd of 2020, had you ever worked a homicide case before?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Had you worked that as the lead or as an assist?
I've assisted in several, and I've been the lead on 3 cases.
How many other detectives are there in Glenn County that work homicides? I mean, normally on your shift? Or
All 7 of us.
7 of you. Okay. So there's 7 detectives to handle all the detective work in Glenn County.
For Glenn County PD. I'm not sure how many investigators the city of Brunswick currently has. That's our criminal investigative division, and we're a little shorthanded right now, so that's why it's that number.
Gotcha. All right. So I'm going to direct your attention specifically to the neighborhood of Satilla Shores. Are you familiar with Satilla Shores here in Glenn County?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And it's in Glenn County.
Yes, ma'am.
Prior to February 2020, had you ever worked the Satilla Shores neighborhood as a patrol officer?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
All right. But what years were those that you worked as a patrol officer in Satilla Shores?
Best recollection, 2013 to 15, and then some time, I believe in 2018, 19. Normally we ride the same zone, and that's all every exit 29 area, all that's considered one zone, but we'll move around on occasion.
So Baker 9.
Yes, ma'am, Baker 9.
All right. So prior to February of 2020, did you know William, who goes by Roddie, Bryan?
No, ma'am.
And prior to February of 2020, did you know Travis McMichael, seated right over there?
No, ma'am.
All right. And prior to February of 2020, did you know Greg McMichael?
I knew of Mr. McMichael from his employment at the district attorney's office here.
Had you ever worked a case with him?
Not that I recall. The only time I recall interactions is passing him one time in the district attorney's office upstairs. I don't recall if we had any interactions if he ever came to our headquarters.
All right. I'm going to direct your attention specifically to Sunday, February 23rd, 2020, approximately 1:15 in the afternoon. Were you working that day?
No, ma'am, I wasn't.
All right, so where were you?
I was at home.
All right, so what's your normal shift, I think, as a detective? Would you have been, it's a Sunday, so you're off.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so you're at home. What happens?
Whenever a major incident happens, our dispatch center will push out administrative pages. It's just a glorified text message, very basic information about something that's happened. I received one of those pages and called Sergeant Oliver on duty and asked if she could use a hand.
And did she take you up on it?
Not initially.
Okay.
Yeah.
Eventually?
Yeah, eventually she agreed to let me come in and help out.
Okay. Did you respond to the scene at Holmes and Satilla?
No, ma'am.
Where did you go?
I went straight to our headquarters.
And what were you wearing that day?
The green polo and tan 511 pants that I mentioned.
Right. So when you got to the Glenn County Police Department headquarters, what was the first task that you kind of handled at that time?
Mr. Travis McMichael arrived with an officer. He was still in the clothes that he was wearing that day and covered with blood, and had a request to get it changed and cleaned up. I called down to the case agent, Investigator Lowry, and Sergeant Oliver was with him as well, and asked what's the status on that, if that's okay. They were good with him getting cleaned up, and so we took photographs of him as he was, and then collected the clothing he was wearing and allowed him to change.
Okay, so Travis McMichael came to headquarters. How'd he get there?
Officer Lewis brought him up in his patrol car.
Okay, and where was Greg McMichael at this time?
As far as I didn't know at that time. He later showed up in our lobby.
Okay, and when he showed up in the lobby, how was he dressed?
He had on a light blue fishing polo, blue jeans, and sandals.
All right, and at the time Travis McMichael showed up, did Mr. Bryan show up at that time as well?
I don't recall when he showed up.
All right, so Travis McMichael, did you want to take some photos at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
And were photos actually taken?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Prior to coming in today, did you have the opportunity to review States Exhibit 237 through 265?
Yes, ma'am.
Were they fair and accurate pictures of Travis McMichael as he was as he came in, and then later cleaned up?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, at this time the state would tender into evidence States 237 through 265.
No objection.
No objection.
No objection.
They're admitted.
So States 237. What's the state? What are we looking at here?
This is a bathroom just outside of the interview rooms, and this is Mr. Travis McMichael as he showed up.
Okay. And so we have, for instance, States 238. Were these a series of photos to capture his head to foot condition from the crime scene as he was transported then to Glenn County headquarters?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So 238 is his left arm.
Yes, ma'am.
239 his right arm.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. What are we looking at? 240.
Boots and blue jeans from his knees.
241.
Waistline with his hands.
242.
Chest.
243.
Back of his head and shoulders.
244.
Same.
245.
More of his torso and his upper back.
246. What's the jury looking at here?
This is his right arm from the side.
247,
A little more turned to the front with his right arm and abdomen.
248,
His hands and forearms.
249,
More specific on his hands.
250,
His left hand and wrist.
251,
Right hand and wrist.
252,
The underside of his left hand and forearm.
253.
Same for his right hand and forearm.
All right, so at any point in time, did he ask for medical attention for any injury or broken skin?
He asked for alcohol swab. That was it.
An alcohol swab?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But like, he didn't need stitches?
No, ma'am.
Didn't have any lumps or contusions or broken skin?
Object to the leading questions, Your Honor.
It's sustained as leading. It's just asking if you just.
Did he have any major injuries that needed medical attention?
No, ma'am.
So then looking at 254, what's the jury looking at here?
This is the right side of Travis McMichael after being cleaned up and changed. Right side of his head.
255.
The back of his head.
And do you have any idea if that is still an abrasion or if that's leftover blood that just didn't come off?
I don't know, ma'am.
What are we looking at with 256?
The left side of his head.
What's the jury looking at in 257?
His face with the scale.
Does he have any bruises?
He's got a little reddening of the cheeks. Past that, none that I recall are standing out to me here now.
258. What's the jury looking at there?
Left side of his head with the scale.
260. What's the jury looking at there?
Right side of his head with the scale.
261. What's the jury looking at here?
His forearms.
And when we look here at 262, do you have any idea if that's an abrasion or if that's just blood that didn't come off?
I believe it was actually an abrasion. I don't,
Do you want me to bring it to you?
no, I can say, I believe it was an abrasion. Yes, ma'am.
And then 263, what are we looking at there?
That's his right forearm. I believe we took a picture of that with a discoloration. I don't remember if we actually noted a cut on that.
And 264,
That's his left forearm, flipped over, showing the bottom of his forearm.
All right, at this point in time, after taking these pictures, you said you encountered Greg McMichael in the lobby, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, what happened next?
Brought him back to our interview rooms and conducted an interview with him.
What time did you start your interview with Greg McMichael?
It's about 3:17 in the afternoon.
And was this interview captured on video?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you reviewed that video interview?
Yes, ma'am.
And was it fair and accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
Anything deleted out of it? Anything added to it?
No, ma'am.
All right. And have you reviewed the transcript of that interview with Greg McMichael?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that transcript a fair and accurate reproduction of the interview you conducted with Greg McMichael?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. At this time, the state will tender into evidence states 225, the video of your interview with Greg McMichael at 3:17 p.m. on February 23rd, 2020, and States Exhibit 225A, the transcript, once again, into the record, and it won't go out with the jury because the jury will not be able to play it in the back.
No objection.
No objection.
No objection.
They're admitted.
So detective, I'm gonna hand you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 225A. You gotta watch the microphone. There you go, sir. All right, so what we're gonna do right now, Detective Marcy, is we're gonna go through what Greg McMichael said about what Greg McMichael did on February 23rd, 2020.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so what I'm gonna do first off is I'm going to generally direct you to page 4. And I'm gonna talk to you here about whether he had known Mr. Bryan previously.
Yes, ma'am. He said he did. He said that he's known Roddie Bryan for years, that he's a mechanic who works at Southern Hardware now. He does a small gas engine repair and lives in the neighborhood, but he wasn't exactly sure where he lives in the neighborhood.
Right. And where did Greg McMichael tell you he lived?
At 230 Satilla Drive.
So I'm going to direct your attention now to page 6. All right, now with regard to page 6, into, I think, page 7, I'm going to go ahead and have you specifically give a quote so that the jury has this verbatim, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So first off, let's take a look at page 6, lines 17 through 20. What did Greg McMichael say had happened that day, or what was he doing that day?
I'm quoting him, he said, and I was out, I had my truck pulled up, backed up to the edge of my garage. I'm reupholstering the seat cushions on my boat, and I was using more or less the bed as a workbench.
Okay, so then continuing on that page, what did he say at lines 22 through 25?
Quote him again. So I'm spraying glue down and putting the padding down and all that kind of stuff. It was, I don't know exactly at what point of, the construction I was at that particular time, but I look up and I see this guy hauling ass.
All right, so at this point in time, what does he say about this guy hauling ass?
He said, I'll continue the quote, I'm not talking about a jog, I'm talking about a haul ass, like something is right on his ass chasing him.
All right, so I'm now going to direct you from lines 4 through 13, okay? So what did he say about being able to recognize this person, lines 4 through 13?
He had seen 2 to 3 prior videos that Diego Perez had provided to him or shown him. He uses the words of this guy breaking into or being or wandering around into this house that's it's under construction.
All right, so I'm going to stop you there. How many videos did he say he'd seen?
2 to 3.
2 to 3 videos.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And he was shown these videos by who?
Diego Perez.
All right. And he described it as this guy doing what?
He used the words breaking into or being or wandering around into this house.
And this is a house that's under construction.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, with regard to the guy that owns it, what's he talk about the guy that owns it, line 8 through 13? Go ahead and give it to us verbatim.
Quoting the guy that owns it, I guess he's doing it himself because it's been in that state with no doors, no windows on it for well over a year now. I think the guy's a banker in Alma, and this is his second, or it's like a vacation home for him, but he's in no rush to build it.
All right, so did you then ask him, I'm going to take that question back. Hold on. I'm going to pivot on you for a second. I'm going to go ahead and have you then move forward to pages 13 through 14. So on pages 13 through 14, do we now pick up back where he's talking about what he did after he's seen the black guy running down the street?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm going to have you do this. We are going to do lines 21 through 25 on page 13, starting with, well, I'm thinking.
I'll be quoting him. He says, well, I'm thinking he's either done something to somebody's chasing him, or, I thought, well, maybe somebody drove up and found him in their house, or drove up to that particular house he likes to go into over and over again.
So he doesn't tell you he specifically saw him commit a crime that day.
Correct.
And going to the next page, 14, line 3, what's he do?
He runs inside of his house and
Okay.
retrieves
Runs inside of his house. Okay. And what did he retrieve?
a .357 Magnum.
All right. I'm going to direct your attention now to page 24. So, with regard to page 24, does he talk to you about how he was able to recognize or think he recognizes Mr. Arbery as the guy from the construction house?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
All right, so I'm going to have you specifically start on line 1.
He refers to Mr. Diego Garcia again, and he tells me that...
You mean Mr. Diego Perez?
I'm sorry, thank you, Diego Perez.
Okay.
And he, Mr. Perez shows Mr. Greg McMichael what the guy looks like using video.
Actually, what I'm going to have you do is I want you to go ahead and just give it to him verbatim, starting at line 1
Okay.
through line 8, okay?
Quoting, Mr. McMichael says, yes, and he shows me what the guy looks like because I had never seen him. So I had heard a description of him, or maybe I had seen him. Maybe I had seen him before he moved to Diego's. I don't really remember exactly. But nonetheless, he had a video that night. He said, take a look at this, and you can see the guy. He's, roaming around in there.
Okay. And then what did you ask?
I asked him if the individual's picking up anything or going through anything.
And specifically, what did he say? Go ahead and quote it for us. Line 11 through 15.
He says, and I'm quoting, not that I recall, I don't think the guy has actually stolen anything out of there, or if he did, it was early in this process. But he keeps going back there over and over and over again to this damn house.
All right, so when you're asking him, was he picking up anything or going through anything, are you talking about that day or are you talking about what he'd seen on the videos?
What he had seen on the videos.
Okay. And he says he doesn't recall seeing him ever steal anything or pick anything up.
Correct.
All right. And he said, I don't think the guy has actually stolen anything out of there. Is that what he tells you?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And
Your Honor, that was an incomplete question, and I would ask that the state, if she's asking the witness to reiterate the testimony that he's already given, which is her right to do, that she state it accurately.
I'm sure it can be cleaned up on cross. Allowed, just can be cleaned up. Go ahead.
thank you. So, and then did he go on to say, if he did, it was early on in this process?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if he did, was he able to tell you that he had personal knowledge of any prior theft that Mr. Arbery had committed at the open construction site? I mean, right there, it says if he did. Did he give you details?
No, ma'am, he did not.
Okay. Did he give you dates?
No, ma'am, he did not.
Did he talk at all about a boat and stuff being stolen off a boat at any point in time?
No, ma'am.
All right, so I'm gonna direct your attention now specifically to, let's go to page 24. Oh, I'm sorry. No wonder it's not working for me. Let's go to page 28. All right. Now, at this point in time, the top of page 28, are you trying to have him clarify some stuff for you?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so where did he say he ran?
Into his residence.
All right. And what did he get out?
A .357 Magnum.
All right. And he did, I'm going to take you to the bottom of page 30 now. Once he ran to the house and got his gun, he went to the truck.
Yes, ma'am.
What did he say the problem with the truck was?
His grandson's car seat is in the passenger side of the truck.
And turning the page to page 31, starting at line 2. But anyway.
He said, I'll quote him, but anyway, it's strapped in. It's a beast to get in and out, you know, processing. So I just opened up, sitting up on top of this car seat like this, you know, I mean, my head, I'm looking down like this through the windshield.
And does he indicate where the truck now goes?
Yes, ma'am.
And it goes down to the corner, and where does it go after that?
Mentions it goes down to the corner of Burford Road.
And why do they go down to Burford Road, based on lines 14 and 15 of page 31?
He says Burford, that's where he is. He's going down, he's running down Burford.
All right, so I'm going to specifically take you to the top of page 32. Okay? All right, so at this point in time, generally, does Gregory McMichael indicate to you that Mr. Arbery's on the left-hand side of the road?
Yes, ma'am.
And is Mr. Gregory McMichael indicating whether he's yelling at Mr. Arbery?
Yes, ma'am.
What's he yelling at Mr. Arbery?
Stop, 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 stop.
All right. And then, what's he say that Mr. Arbery does on line 3?
Line 3, he says that Mr. Arbery puts it in high gear.
Okay. And what did Mr. Gregory McMichael say at that point once Mr. Arbery put it in high gear?
He stated to cut him off 3 times.
All right. And he just said, I said, cut him off, cut him off, cut him off.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And what did he say the guy did next?
Mr. Arbery started running back the other way.
Well, did he turn around first?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Turn around first and start running back the other way.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, at this point, does Mr. McMichael indicate that where he is as far as being in the truck, out of the truck, or anything like that, according to line 17 and 18?
He's out of the truck on foot. He was heading the same direction Mr. Arbery was now heading.
All right. So at this point, when the guy turns around and runs back the other way on Burford, Mr. Greg McMichael's out of that truck and he's headed back down that way on foot.
Yes, ma'am.
So at some point, does he decide to get back in the white pickup truck?
Yes, ma'am.
And so what does he say specifically, lines 19 through 22?
He says, and I'm quoting, so I'm not getting back in that front seat, the car seat. So I jumped to the back. I don't jump anywhere.
He doesn't jump anywhere.
No.
So what does he say he did next?
So he says, and continuing the quote from there, okay, so I crawled my ass, my old cripple ass, up into the back of the truck, and I can still see the guy down there.
All right. So by the time he gets back in the truck, he can still see Mr. Arbery down there.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So taking you to page 33. I'm going to go ahead on page 33 and have you start about midway where you're talking about being on Zellwood. So you're talking to Mr. Gregory McMichael about, we're coming up on Zellwood.
Yes, ma'am.
What does he say?
He confirms that, yes, Zellwood.
And then where did he say they went?
They went down Holmes Road.
All right. And did he indicate why they went down Holmes Road?
He mentions that he turned down, Mr. Arbery turned down Holmes Road.
Okay. And at some point, does he indicate whether Mr. Arbery sees them?
Yes, ma'am.
And once he sees them, what does Mr. Arbery do?
He turned and started running back. He uses the words that way.
All right. And then does he tell you where that is back toward where?
He indicates the intersection of back towards this intersection.
Does he actually say what intersection at that point?
No, ma'am, he doesn't right at this point.
He just says intersection.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, page 33. All right, so I'm actually going to have you give the jury the specific quotes on line 20 through 22 that Greg McMichael says. Okay? And what I want is, does he first indicate the guy? Let me think. The guy is, he sees Mr. McMichael, and then does he say at some point, he, meaning the guy, turns and starts running back that way?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So going to page 34 now. Did you ask Mr. McMichael where Mr. McMichael tried to pin Mr. Arbery the first time?
Yes, ma'am.
Where did he indicate he tried to pin Mr. Arbery the first time?
On Burford Road.
All right. Now, going to page 35. As they're on Holmes Road, where is Mr. Greg McMichael? Line 21.
He says that he is in the back of the truck with the 357.
All right. Now, specifically, on Holmes Road, in the back of the truck with the 357, he then says specifically, I want you to quote this, line 25 into the top of line 1 and 2 on page 36. What does he specifically say?
Quoting, he says, I said, stop, you know, I'll blow your fucking head off or something. I was trying to convey to this guy we were not playing, you know.
Okay. Now, does he specifically indicate at what point he says this to Mr. Arbery?
No, ma'am.
All right, so you don't know where on Holmes Road it is that he says this to Mr. Arbery?
No, ma'am.
Going now to page 39. All right, so I'm going to talk to you now about what Mr. Greg McMichael says happens next. I'm going to direct your attention to lines 2 through 7 of page 39.
Okay.
All right, so once again, he's in the back of the truck with his weapon. What does he say he's doing?
He says that he's aiming.
Did he shoot?
No, ma'am.
And after he heard the shots were fired, how many shots did he say were fired?
He mentions 2.
And what did he do next?
He gets out of the truck. He stated that he had a hip replacement so he doesn't jump anywhere, that he eased himself out of the truck.
All right. So this is a man with a hip replacement, and so he had to ease himself out of the truck. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at this point in time, did he indicate that he went and checked Mr. Arbery for a weapon?
Yes, ma'am.
Now directing your attention to page 41. Did Mr. McMichael indicate whether he had his cell phone with him?
He did not.
All right.
He stated he did not.
All right. But he did call 911.
Yes, ma'am.
Whose phone did he have to use?
He used Travis McMichael's phone.
So specifically then directing your attention to page 42. At this point in the interview, did you really start to talk to him about what was his intent with Mr. Arbery should he have actually stopped?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And what was his intent?
He said to hold on, to hold him.
To hold him?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he use the word arrest?
No, ma'am.
Did he tell you what he was going to be arrested for?
No, ma'am.
Did he use the word citizen's arrest?
No, ma'am.
Did he use the word detain?
No, ma'am.
So he's holding him. Did he tell you what he was going to hold him for?
He was going to contact the county police.
Okay, and do what?
He was going to hold him for county police so that he could either be arrested or identified.
All right, I'm going to back you up for a minute. Specifically, line 24 through 25. I'm going to actually take you up to line 21. I want you to read that quote to the jury.
He says, and I quote, "Yeah, to hold him till you know and call county police to." I said, okay. He continues to come and, check him out.
Check him out?
Yes,
Come
ma'am.
and check him out? That's what he says?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So he's calling to have the county police come and check him out. And then what does he say?
Continuing quote, there was no doubt in my mind as to who this guy was, none, having seen the videos prior.
All right, so having seen the videos, he's making this identification of this man.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, what else is he then talking to you about? The next thing that he's trying to explain his intent to you about?
I'll continue the quote from there. The thing that was not doubtful, but was certainly a driving factor in my mind, was that my son had a missing pistol, and I'm pretty certain this guy, well, I don't know for a fact, and I have no reason to think that he did it, other than the fact that this guy has been doing this crap over and over and over.
Okay, so he's talking about his son, Travis McMichael, has a missing pistol.
Yes, ma'am.
And then he's trying to tell you, I'm pretty certain this guy, but I don't know for a fact that he's the one who stole it.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what he's trying to tell you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But he doesn't have any evidence to present to you that Mr. Arbery is the one who stole Travis McMichael's handgun.
Correct.
That's a mischaracterization. He's providing statements to the officer about it.
Let's just let the transcript speak for itself. It's a statement.
Did he say, I don't know for a fact?
Yes, ma'am.
Did they then say, I have no reason to think that he did it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Other than the fact that he's been doing this crap over and over and over?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. In fact, when he goes down to line 17 through 21, what does he say about Travis McMichael's stolen handgun at that point?
He says, and quoting, "Yeah, I had never seen this guy personally before and didn't see anybody go to the truck that day and take his weapon."
Okay. So going to the truck and taking the weapon, is that Travis McMichael's handgun?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so Greg McMichael is talking about with you a lot of different crimes that he suspects Mr. Arbery had committed, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Did he provide you with any specific details about the names, the addresses, the locations of these crimes?
No, ma'am.
All right. But did he talk about break-ins?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he throw around the word burglaries?
Yes, ma'am. You mentioned burglars, yeah.
All right. Did he throw around like entering autos or doing stuff like that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Did I ask you to go back and look at all of the 911 calls into the Satilla Shores neighborhood from January 1st of 2019 through February 23rd of 2020?
Yes, ma'am. I think it actually looked into a little bit further into 2020. Let's see. It was from, the dates that I looked at were 1/1 of 2019 to 5/25 of 20.
All right, so what I'm gonna have you do is only focus on 1/1 of 19 through February 23rd of 2020, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so how many burglary calls for 911 came into the Satilla Shores neighborhood?
Object, because this is calling for hearsay. He's asking him to report what he learned through other calls and documents, and the subject matter of those, and the determinations of those. That's all hearsay. There should be witnesses for those documents. He didn't have anything to do with these things.
It's only a foundation of what he's done and where the.
Sure thing. So, detective, which organization do you work for? All right, and you were a detective who worked on this case, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you interviewed Greg McMichael, that's correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and Greg McMichael had a claim that there was burglaries and entering autos and all this stuff, and he suspected Mr. Arbery.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When I asked you to go ahead and review this information, how did you get this particular information I asked you to review?
I received the original list of incidents from the area from our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I went into our reporting system, Spillman, and I pulled it again, and then exported just the general list of case numbers, dates, and natures into Excel, and started looking at case counts. Then went back into Spillman and pulled the same range, but it was only incidents that an actual report had been taken. So versus somebody calling in, an officer responding and clearing up, you know, they help somebody out or something that doesn't require an actual written report versus they actually went back and we were required to document something. I pulled both lists.
All right, so you pulled both lists. And this is a system that is maintained in the normal course of business at the Glenn County Police Department?
Yes, ma'am. It's used by most, I believe, all agencies in Glenn County, if not
All right.
most.
And I think you mentioned its name was Spillman?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And are these documents kept in the ordinary course of business for you to do evaluations on?
Yes, ma'am.
And they're available for you as part of your job as a detective?
Yes, ma'am.
And you can pull them up to do analysis, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And in this case, did I ask you to pull them up out of Spillman independently yourself to perform an analysis?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did I ask you to look at?
The reports, the ones that actually had the reports written for them. So cases that were closed out, active. That's the best way to say is in our terminology. So an incident report was completed.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and drill down to that. Do people call 911 and then there's nothing really there to it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. But there's still a 911 call recorded that comes up?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So when you looked at, what I asked you to look at, it was actually a 911 call where there was like kind of something that actually really happened?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So in other words, there was an investigation, somebody looked into something, somebody reported something, and that somebody wrote a report?
For some instances, and then one other instance with a burglary, there wasn't a report.
So there was one burglary that was unfounded?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And that is all of January 1st, 2019 through February 23rd of 2020?
Judge, we're getting into the objectionable material. It's being offered for the truth. Somebody investigated, somebody reported, somebody wrote a report. That information the state is now offering as the truth that either an incident did or didn't take place. She's offering it through this witness that has no direct knowledge of it, and it's being offered for the truth. So if the state wants to do that, call the witnesses who dealt with it.
We join in that objection.
So explain where the state's coming from on it.
Sure.
I didn't hear your
I asked her to explain where the state is coming from on it.
Well, Your Honor, we
Based
would
on the
ask that
objection.
this be done outside the presence of the jury. This is an
All right,
appropriate.
ladies and gentlemen, if you could go ahead and take a step outside, or step back into the jury.
All right, for jury.
I'm going to ask if you could just go ahead and take a step outside of the courtroom while we address the matter before the court. From the state.
Thank you, Judge. The only testimony the state is trying to elicit at this point in time is that there was only one burglary call in the entire Satilla Shores neighborhood between January 1st, 2019 and February 23rd, 2020, and it was an unfounded burglary call. In addition, there were only 4 entering auto calls in that time frame, one of which was Travis McMichael's on January 1st, 2020. So the state is entitled to rebut these statements by Greg McMichael about, oh, there's all this crime and he's this suspect. He's already, the statement's already in. Oh, they've got him on video every third or fourth night out there breaking into people's homes.